Hello YouTube, new t-shirt Barrett here, joined by Mr. Matt Purslow.
Also with new t-shirt.
Also with a new t-shirt.
Yeah.
We've just been shopping. It's lovely. That's what we're here to talk. No, that's not what we're here to talk to you about. We're actually here to talk to you about Far Cry 5. Now, when you're seeing this video, the new trailer should have just appeared.
Yep.
But Matthew Purslow, the lucky son of a gun, got to see a little bit early down in London. And he also got a little bit more information.
Just a touch, yeah.
That we're going to bring you all about Far Cry 5 in 5 things that you need to know about the game. All right, Matt. Number 1, the Project to Eden's Gate, which is essentially the cult. Right?
Yes, yeah. So Far Cry 5, if you managed to figure out from the poster that we've already seen, is about a cult. It is an extremist kind of cult that has moved in to Montana. They've got 3 kind of core beliefs. They're into freedom. Of course you are. It's set in America.
A little bit of freedom, fine.
They're into their faith.
I do not have a problem with that on a base level.
Okay. They're also massively into firearms.
We might be getting into a problem now.
Yeah. That makes it a Far Cry game, isn't it? It's not a Far Cry game if it's not about guns.
You've got to be able to fire people into jeeps and stuff.
Yeah, exactly. So it's the leader of this cult, the leader at Project at Eden's Gate, is Joseph Seed. Seed. I like to plant the seeds of faith in people's heads.
All right.
So he's the father.
Okay.
He's the head of the cult. The kind of the older guy, and he's got 2 sons. That's Jacob Seed and John Seed. You'll probably have seen them on the poster that you've already seen. Okay. Jacob's the eldest. He's the guy with the buzz cut sort of haircut.
Sure.
The younger one with the aviator glasses, that's John Seed.
So he's the guy in the middle.
They're just to the kind of left and right.
Okay, sure. So presumably it's Joseph in the middle.
Yeah, the guy with the yellow glasses, that's Joseph, yeah. Right. And then there's also, those guys have got a half-sister called Faith, who's the only lady.
The woman in the poster,
Yeah, by the dog with the cross on his face.
Best dog.
Yeah, so obviously that's a crucifix. It's heavily implied to be a Christianity cult. They don't actually name themselves by Christianity. This is Project at Eden's Gate, which obviously is kind of like how, I guess, Westboro Baptist is kind of like not, they don't necessarily have Christian written in all their things. They are the Westboro Church and stuff like that. So that's what these guys are.
But they're using like Crusader imagery on the face.
Oh yeah, so very much so. Yeah, there's less actual crosses involved in their imagery. It's very that almost Crusader look. You've kind of got iron-style crosses. Yeah. There's a bit in the trailer where someone has been stabbed in the back with kind of like a staff. But I say instead of a crucifix on the top, it is kind of their own heraldry that is very much cross-influence, but it's their own thing. Almost as if maybe this cult is kind of like claiming Christianity to be their own, so they've got control over it. There's a bit in the trailer where Joseph is like, "We will take you willingly or not." They don't care about how they're going to get their
They're on
members.
a bit of a purge. They're on a bit of a crusade, basically.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and his 3 children are known as the Heralds. So, presumably they're going to be our hierarchy of antagonists that we build our way through before we get to Joseph.
Sure, it all seems to kind of fit into that Far Cry mold, but a pretty different kind of feel, really.
Yeah. It's like a Far Cry, I think, has always danced with controversy. Kind of like Far Cry 3, for example, sort of like had a lot of people saw it as a white savior kind of story. Like, whether you agreed with that interpretation or not, it was still quite clearly dancing around the idea of white people going to native sort of areas.
Yeah, and causing trouble / saving them as...
Yeah. And Far Cry 4 had kind of its own sort of elements of sort of like just dancing around a little bit of taboo. Yeah. I think Far Cry 5 is the highest they've ever taken.
They are walking some incredibly thin lines. And I applaud that.
Yeah.
Now, how that's going to go, we'll see. And well, in fact, let's move on and we'll see what they're doing with different elements of that as well. So, number 2, second thing you need to know about is the Resistance. Yeah. I'm going to guess this is you.
Not just you. So we'll come on to what your role is in just a bit, but we're going to talk about in sort of like Hope County, which is in this area in Montana where the cult have moved into. There are some people that haven't taken kindly to the fact that these mad raving lunatics have come in and started stealing people essentially from their community. So first among these is Pastor Jerome, who's a black preacher. He's had his own church in the county for a while. And like suddenly his flock is sort of taken astray and there's this bloke that's come in essentially telling lies and stealing his congregation. So you'll notice there are some vignettes which explain these characters, which should be available. In that vignette, Pastor Jerome is like, if I'm not the shepherd, I must be the wolf. Right. Whilst he's saying this, loading magazines into guns, feeding a shotgun. It's like, this is a preacher that's not going to mess around. You know, you do not take his flock.
He's going full Half-Life 2.
Yeah, basically. Yeah, exactly.
Okay, fair enough.
So he's one of the people, and obviously I would assume that he's going to be a quest giver and he's going to help you out.
Yeah, these are going to be the guys that will be helping you out.
Yeah, yeah. Second in this Resistance sort of crew is a girl called Mary May. She's the owner.
Some of these names.
Yeah,
like,
yeah. Oh, so it sounds like they're a bit southern, but it's not. Obviously, Montana's quite a northern sort of state.
I do wonder if they were like, they made the story and then they were like, we cannot set this in the south. We just can't do it. And so they were like, right, what's the most northern state we can find? And
it's right on the border.
Picked it. Yeah.
It's still a central state though, but it's so Mary May. She's the owner of the Whistling Beaver, which is a saloon in the town. So, you know, obviously this has got elements of being a bit of a Western.
Yeah.
So it's going to be that kind of modern. I'm assuming at some point that this bar is going to get absolutely shot to pieces.
Absolutely, yeah, definitely.
The cult took her mum and her brother.
Right.
Left her father kind of quite a broken man. And she's just like, I'm not going to let them take everything. Like, she was born in Hope sort of like county. She had her first kiss behind the bar, all of this, you know.
Okay, sure. So she's
from
there, and that is where she sets herself, and she doesn't want to leave. She likes being there.
And she's not going to let, you know, this cult take over.
Sure.
Which then leaves Nick Rye is the third person that you'll be speaking to. He's a wholesome family man, just really bloody loves planes. Obsessed with planes.
Really into
He's got his own plane. I'm going to assume at some point he's probably going to be a pilot for you.
Yeah, and that would imply that we're going to have a really pretty massive map.
Yeah,
yeah,
kind of like
gameplay things.
Previously, there's always been kind of like a pilot in Far Cry, but they've tended to be sort of like a transition between two kind of big island sort of areas, and it's kind of like, oh, you were here and now you're there because of the aid of a pilot. I think Nick is going to be a larger kind of position than just the guy that transitions you between two areas. In his vignette, you see him strapping a minigun to the front of his plane. I'm going to assume there's going to be some sort of like death from above system that we can engage.
Number 3, you.
Yes,
you,
me,
Matt, you're in the game.
And you, Ben, because you can be in the game as well. Yes. Yeah, literally anybody can be in the game because there's no player character in Far Cry 5 as there has been previously. So, for example, Far Cry 3, which you play Jason Brody, who was like the dude bro on holiday with his mates.
Literally called Brody.
Yeah. There's not any of that. It's just you are a deputy sheriff who's been sent out to arrest Joseph Seed, but there's a character creation tool so you can create who you want to be. So if you want to be just you, Ben, with the beard, and I assume you can make that. I just know there's a character creator. I don't know quite how deep it'll be. I'm going to assume maybe based around kind of like the options that you had in Ghost Recon Wildlands, which obviously was kind of not an RPG style one, but it got several different heads to choose from.
The Division had a reasonably good one as well. And I mean, the thing about Ubisoft is all of their studios are Ubisoft X.
Yes.
They can all communicate, they
exactly,
can all share technology. It's why, you know, we've had problems with their games feeling samey in the past, but the advantage is, in a situation like this, they don't have to remake the wheel.
So basically, kind of like race and gender up to you. You can do anything.
But you are a cop, right?
You are a cop, yes. And the idea is that you go into arrest. The opening of the game, there's always kind of a very strong opener to a Far Cry.
Yeah.
And it's going to be you and a couple of other kind of coppers are going to go in to arrest Joseph Seed. You know, you've already decided that, like the U.S. Marshal Office has decided that this can't go on any longer. You know, this is an aggressive cult that is doing bad things. So you're sent in. He actually agrees to come along quietly. He's like, take me away, officer, you know. Presumably someone in the cult is not going to agree with that because everything goes wrong. I don't know what goes wrong, but it's all going to go downhill. And your fellow officers are kidnapped, and you're now stuck in Hope County, outgunned, you know, like presumably on the run from this cult.
Sure.
And it's obviously up to you to kind of like join in with the resistance and help sort of like complete your task.
Slowly eliminate all the icons from the map until there's no more story left to do. Okay, fair enough. So, number 4, stuff you can do.
Right, yes.
Anything unique to Far Cry 5?
It's interesting. We've not actually seen enough of the game so far. It was just kind of like a primer and a flavour thing for us to see exactly what it's going to be. Because obviously Far Cry 3 was the thing that kind of changed Far Cry entirely. Like 1 and 2 are very different games to 3, but 4 and arguably Primal are quite similar games to 3. It sounds like it's still going to carry on that lineage. We know there's going to be guns for hire, which is a mechanic that was introduced in Far Cry 4, which is being able to call on NPCs to help you out in battle. Okay. Presumably, as you do things for the Resistance, they'll like enjoy your company. They'll believe that you're fighting for them, and they'll be able to send out people to help you in sort of like combat encounters. There's also Fangs for hire, which is similar to an item that was brought in Far Cry Primal, which is you'll be able to have animal companions.
Okay. So presumably not magically controlling a bear.
Yeah, I'm going to assume it's more a case of, you know how kind of like the police have the dog squad?
Yeah.
I think it's going to probably be in the fiction around that, being able to sort of like have a dog on your side. And I get the impression that you'll be able to sort of like say, here boy, you know, go into that compound and, you know, maybe grab a guy by the leg or something like that.
Yeah, like take one guy out or grab a gun.
Yeah, something like that. It's going to be kind of smaller stuff. I'm also going to assume that there'll be the more emergent style animal stuff as well. So, you know, being able to coax a bear to go into, because obviously it's Montana, there's going to be bears.
Okay, sweet. Yeah,
you know, we've got the kind of mountain regions and stuff like
sure.
that. So, you know, get the bears down and, you know, maybe we'll be able to get them to attack a cult outpost or something like that through more natural means. But yeah, there's the Fangs for hire system is here.
And one would assume, based on that bit of key art in which there was the dog with the Crusader thing on his face,
presumably
they will also have dogs and animals, and you know, that'll be part of it.
Absolutely,
just to vary up the combat and stuff.
The other important thing is there's definitely the new thing that I know they've got is something called Friends for Hire, which actually is just their name for co-op. The entire game is in co-op.
It's the whole thing.
Yeah, it's not like, so Far Cry 4 had got co-op, but it was just that you could do specific kind of encounters in the map. There were kind of like big fortresses, and it was like you could co-op to do those. No, Friends for Hire means that you can call a friend into the game and you can just play everything in co-op.
Okay, and presumably that'll be enabled to work with the story.
Yeah, so I assume that if you do that, what it will be is that one of the coppers that are with you at the start, maybe they don't get kidnapped. Maybe you still have one of your squad with you, and those are the people that act as your co-op partners.
Sure, okay, fair enough. And then finally, number 5 is Hope County itself, Montana.
Yep.
I know very little about Montana. I probably know very little about most American states. So what's the deal with Far Cry 5's Montana?
So Montana is kind of like the ideal setting, really, I guess, for a Far Cry game. It's kind of like wide sort of open plain sort of areas. There's a bit of mountainous region. There's the difference between the kind of more green, lush sort of areas, because it is quite northern, so it's got the kind of fertile ground. Okay. But there's kind of like the browns and the greens and the contrast, lots of trees and stuff like that. But the reason why Ubisoft sort of like said that they wanted to set it in America, you know, as opposed to these more exotic locations they've been to before. You know, we've had Africa for Far Cry 2, we've had tropical islands, you know, sort of like
the ancient world in Far Cry Primal.
Ubisoft are like, the world is changing, and kind of like we're at this point where people are sort of like, a lot of kind of communities are realizing that maybe the enemy's within a bit. Kind of like there's been a rise in private military contractors in kind of like America and stuff like that, and it means that the West now is kind of arguably a more frightening place than it ever has been. You know, we're not sure what's going on, and so hence this American sort of setting. So you've got the classic kind of American look going on. Obviously, that religious aspect means that we get the little kind of wooden chapels that you've seen. Like, you know, the ideal look of Preacher, for example, has got that kind of the chapel in the middle of nowhere that like the congregation come to from the local towns and stuff like that. But it also means that we're going to get muscle cars. We're going to get kind of like those American sort of like small planes. Planes are a confirmed item, so it's not just a case of that Nick, your pilot, I think is going to be part of that. I actually get the impression that they've said that planes are a flyable vehicle. Which suggests to me that the map is going to be quite large if planes, like we had gyrocopters in 4, but this is a plane, this is suggesting larger kind of traversal. So I get the impression
a higher speed.
Yeah, certainly so.
And I suppose, you know, Montana will also have various sides of towns, trains, large roads, small roads.
Yeah, we're arguably in the most civilized kind of, in terms of Western civilization area that we've been, so presumably more built up areas. It's not going to be kind of more smaller native groups. You know, it's not an abandoned island that has, you know, a
one small village.
That's very tribal. This is America. We're going to have all that kind of Western infrastructure.
So, final question on that, I suppose, is what time this is set in.
Right. Yeah. I thought when they said that it was going to be kind of like this American kind of Western sort of thing, that since it was set in the modern day, I assume they go for maybe the 80s.
Yeah, like 85.
Yeah. But I actually think they haven't said anything about actually when it is, but just from what I've seen of it so far, I'm fairly certain it's actually in the modern day.
Yeah.
It suits that message they kind of like, when we sat down to see the assets that they got at this event, all the talk was about like the world is a very different place now, everything's changing. You know, we've got kind of like a Republican in office. The way that kind of life is at the moment is this very kind of harsh sort of smash between two sets of very different values. And I think, you know, this game is supposed to capitalize on that. So I don't, like it would work in the 80s, but I think like the message of that kind of marketing element of it feels like it's very much for the modern day.
It sounds, what I would guess is they're going to do is it'll be set modern day, but they'll chop all the phone lines down.
Sure, yeah.
Or whatever, you know, they'll have some kind of way of making it so, oh, well, the cult's blacked out communication, so you can't just get on your phone and call the army.
Yeah, which might, it'll be towers, won't it? You'll be climbing up towers to refix the phone lines.
We've nailed it, worked it out. Just send the check this way, Ubisoft. Okay, thank you very much for joining us. Hope you enjoyed this video. We'll have much more on Far Cry 5, as it's presumably they'll be at E3.
Oh, it's going to be one of the big things.
That's probably the next big reveal after today, which is only 2 weeks away. Oh dear God. If you did enjoy the video, do hit like. Please subscribe for more, and we'll see you later today for more videos.